Welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on. Colin, you're a serial entrepreneur, starting your first business right out of college with no business marketing or finance classes taken. And ever since then, you or best friends have gone on to create a series of software and service businesses. The latest venture being Rainmaker, where you help founders, business coaches, and sales teams build their own network, leads, sales. I'm curious, given your set of experiences, why jump into what I would view as a very competitive space of lead generation, especially on LinkedIn?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think part of it is because over the last 6, 7 years, I've honed my craft around LinkedIn, and I found it to be a really wonderful source of building out my network leads and sales, even more so than having done a lot of experimentation and testing and growth marketing through cold email. And being an entrepreneur at heart, I realized that what I had learned and the system I'd put together could work for other businesses as well, especially anyone that sits in a sales seat, whether that's a solopreneur all the way up to.
When you started Rainmaker, I certainly understand your perspective of being able to do this pretty well for yourselves. And do you still see an issue with being able to create leads via LinkedIn as being a key issue, as opposed to the many other channels that are currently available today? And of course, the use of AI, which has automated a lot of things. How do you see a Rainmaker
Mhm.
fitting into this whole space?
Yeah, no, I think that, again, a good question. So I think two things. One, a lot of what I talk about with prospects and when I'm on podcasts, when I'm presenting to companies, when I'm teaching them about how to use LinkedIn is very much process driven. And part of the value that I find is that through the education that I'm providing, which gets pretty explicit in terms of how people should be using LinkedIn, they can go and do all the things I'm recommending manually if they want. What Rainmaker is doing is applying a layer of automation onto really a proven process that you can still do manually. And one of the big kind of demarcation lines in how I use LinkedIn, and especially the focus of Rainmaker, is that I am not focused at all on my clients' LinkedIn profiles, and I'm
Hmm.
not focused at all on organic content. So all the posts that you're doing, all the things about likes and comments and all, that's not even in the purview of Rainmaker. And it's not what I spend the majority of my time focusing on. What I am focusing on is continually growing out my first degree network of ideal client prospects. So anytime I want to leverage a LinkedIn activity, I have a larger pool of prospects that I can drive every time I'm doing that. And then what I'm doing is I'm focusing on specific strategies that are going after my prospects as a group, but also as individuals. So an example would be creating an asset, right? Maybe there's some type of an asset that I've created that I think my prospects would be interested in. And maybe my prospects are divvied up into different verticals, right? For me, it's founders, it's business coaches, it's fractionals, it's sales executives, right? Those are just some of the verticals that I lean into. Now, for you or for anyone else listening, you might have different verticals as well that you divvy out your prospects into. But what LinkedIn then allows you to do is to start going after that audience in ways that are leveraging the features and functions within LinkedIn. Maybe there's an asset you want to share via message. Maybe you want to invite them to participate in a poll that you're doing. Maybe there's a LinkedIn live stream that you're doing teaching about a specific subject or topic area that you want to invite them to. Those are just some of the things that you can do where now you're engaging with your audience one on one. You're engaging with your audience in a way that's providing educational value. And that's really one of the main tenets of my philosophy of LinkedIn is that nobody wants to be sold on LinkedIn, but virtually everyone is willing to be educated on LinkedIn. And that's the onus is on you, the person sitting in the sales seat. And I don't care, again, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you sit on a large sales team, the onus is on you to understand who are my prospects? What are the pains and barriers that they're trying to overcome? What is it that they've could learn from me? What could I teach them that they would be interested in understanding and learning about? And then leveraging the different LinkedIn functions and features to reach out to these people over time and have those different touch points where you're not selling them. What you're doing is you're providing value. You're engaging them with them in meaningful ways. And I think that's part of the beauty of LinkedIn, is that the features and functions available to you within LinkedIn allow you to have these different touch points with people in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming, and if done properly, again, following that mindset of like education first and being authentic and genuine and really figuring out what it is your audience can learn from you. If you lead with that, then I think any, especially B2B business, can generate leads and
Could you give us an example of what that looks like?
Yeah, for sure. I think about LinkedIn in 3 layers. So like that top layer is philosophy, right? We touched on that. Being authentic and genuine. I think most people do a good job about that. Having an educational mindset as well as an experimentation mindset, meaning you're going to try different features and functions within LinkedIn, stack what works. If something doesn't work, table that, maybe you try it again later. And then finally, figuring out what it is your audience can learn from you, right? That's the base philosophy that you need to adopt. Then the layer underneath that is around audience building, typically using like Sales Navigator, but you could use Sales Navigator. Some of my clients will send me like lists from Zoom Info. I'll use those. We'll get lists sometimes from trade shows or events, conferences, etc. Another kind of growth hack for building out an audience on LinkedIn is look at your direct competitors' LinkedIn events, or maybe there's an industry association or organization putting on a LinkedIn event. If you go and attend those events, you can see everyone else that's also attending that event. And you can actually start building out a prospect list of people that are publicly raising their hand and saying, this is who I am and I'm interested in this topic. So paying attention to your direct competitors' LinkedIn events, as well as any events that have to do with a topic that your business solves for, go attend those events and you can start building out a list of prospects from those events. So those are the top 2 layers, philosophy and then audience building, right? You have to start building out an audience of prospects you want to start reaching out to. And then the final layer is strategy, actually putting these strategies for activating that audience in place. So, the number one thing you have to do is grow out your network week in and week out. And the kind of the cadence I use is reaching out to 25 people a day, Monday through Friday during normal working hours. We do not use a connection message, and we're typically seeing around a 20 to 25% connection rate back. If someone doesn't connect within 30 days, then we withdraw or rescind the invite. And that's just good LinkedIn hygiene. Again, everything I'm talking about, you can go and do manually if you want. And so over time, your ideal client profile, your audience is building because you're connecting with people each and every week. And then very typically we'll like bolt on a messaging campaign where that first message goes out like 1 to 3 days after the connection's made. And really what you want to do is just thank them for the connection. Don't sell anything. Don't even try and help. Just thank them for the connection. And then if they respond, it'll just show up in your LinkedIn inbox and you take that conversation wherever you want it to go. If they don't respond, then 7 to 10 days later, then that's where you want to send a first message, really where you're trying to add value. And that could be asking a really great question where you're starting to get a response back from people just from a nice, thoughtful question. Another would be sharing an asset that you built out, or maybe there's a third party that's created an asset you think that audience would be interested in. Maybe, again, you want to invite them to a LinkedIn poll to participate, or maybe you want to invite them to a LinkedIn live stream where you're teaching about a specific subject and you want to invite them to come learn from you. These are different ways of starting to message an audience and to start inviting them to the different things that you're doing. And as an example, a LinkedIn live stream is a very unique type of event on LinkedIn. And it has functionality built into it about inviting your first connections to the event. So you don't necessarily message them to invite them to the event. You can, but I would recommend using the LinkedIn event invite function because it shows up as an alert in their profile. It's not something that you'll burn your audience out in inviting them to your different live streams. And it's a wonderful way for you to get them to start seeing you as a thought leader, start trusting you. to start engaging with your content. And because they are opting into the event, they're pressing the attend button. It's now showing you who they are. It's letting you know that they're interested in this specific topic. And then typically what I'll do is after the event is over, I'll message all the attendees and I'll say, hey, Colin, thanks again for registering for the LinkedIn live stream I led. Here's a link to the recording. And then underneath it, I'll say, if you ever want to chat LinkedIn strategy, feel free to grab some time convenient for you here. And I'll give them a Calendly link, right? And so for any, especially B2B, meetings are the lifeblood of your business, right? Very few B2B businesses, people just have a buy button. They just buy and never talk to you, right? Certainly can be some SaaS businesses like that. But generally speaking, B2B, you need to have some type of a conversation with a client. The thing about LinkedIn live streams is that it allows you to give someone your Calendly in a way that is not salesy, it's not pushy, it's just a next natural step, a next natural progression of someone potentially learning from you after they've started to engage with your live stream content. So that's an example or some examples of like how I think about LinkedIn. And as you'll notice, none of what I'm talking about has to do with posting organic content. Everything I'm talking about is growing out your first degree network. And then it's starting to engage with those first degree connections in ways that is highly meaningful and is starting to build relationship, which that is what gives you really the runway to start onboarding them into leads.
Right.
And
I haven't experimented with live stream on LinkedIn. So I'm curious, if you weren't doing live stream, but you said you don't send a connection message. So what is the nature of the very first message that you would send to a potential prospect?
Yeah. So it really depends on the specific audience that you're targeting. So I'll use an example. One of my verticals are salespeople. And I started to reach out to sales executives here in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So that's where I'm located. And so I started reaching out and building out first connections. And because we're in the same geography, I already have a lot of mutual connections with these people. And so my connection rate is around probably 40%, right, with this group. And so my first message back was just like, hey, thanks so much for connecting. Always enjoy connecting with other people here in the Twin Cities, something like that. And then my first message to them was asking them if they knew of any good networking events that they'd recommend here in the Twin Cities. Okay. But my ultimate goal with that is then I started to invite these sales executives. I'm doing one next week. Now I'm starting to invite them to my live streams to start learning from me with some of the content that I'm teaching around how to use LinkedIn. Right. And so what I'm doing with my messaging is warming them up. I'm getting them more associated with who I am as an individual. I know a lot of those people are clicking through and taking a look at my profile. And another activity I did with this group about 2-3 weeks ago, I think about 160 of them, I invited to participate in a LinkedIn poll I had created. And I think I got around 40 of them to participate in the poll. And that's an example of, and again, my poll was thought out of what would these salespeople, what kind of a poll would they be interested in participating with, where it's not just what's your favorite sandwich? It's like, I'm actually getting them to participate in something meaningful, thoughtful, and then getting them to engage with something that I'm creating. But those are examples of like how I'm activating a specific audience that's helping me, generate leads through LinkedIn.
This in the example that you're using, you're leveraging your geographic location as well as perhaps some interesting first degree connections to reach out to others. You gave the example of a poll, but I'm curious, it's been a while since I've done a poll on LinkedIn, but how do you invite others to participate in the poll? I don't recall a feature for that.
It's just just a direct message. Right. Yep. So that's just a direct message. Yep. And so you just want the poll to be something that is, again, that pertains to their industry or title. And I would say the vast majority of the connections that I've made and that a lot of my clients make isn't necessarily based on a geography. Yep. I'm just using that as an example. But certainly you want to leverage the filters that will help you get the best results as fast as possible. And one of those would be geography, right? If geography doesn't really matter and you can start in a geography where you're going to be connecting with people that are most likely going to be second degree connections because you're in the same geography and have a lot of the same connections already, leverage that, use that.
I'd love to dive into this and unpack more of what the LinkedIn lead generation looks like from your perspective. But I'm also curious, given your journey to date, what would you say is your personal area of strength?
As it pertains to business in
Yeah.
general, or as it pertains to worship or
Your personal area of
Rainmaker,
strength
or
that you
yeah,
see certainly contributes to your business success.
probably, yeah, being hard-headed and
Ter-
perseverance.
Terrific.
Yeah, I definitely had my share of failures. I'd say of all the things that Josh, Zach, and I have built over the years, you know,
Mhm.
60, 70% of them failed. So it's the other 30 or 40% that are carrying the load. And so, yeah, I don't know a successful entrepreneur that hasn't had their heavy
So,
share of failures. And so you gotta
on the
keep
face of it,
standing
it
up.
would make sense. But I'm curious, would you say that in that area of strength, there's something that businesses don't know but should? Yeah.
When you say business, do you also mean entrepreneurs? Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I think with entrepreneurship, many times it's hard for us to know what's working or what's not, or how long we should put effort into something. And at the end of the day, and I'll speak broadly to this, for most entrepreneurs and most businesses, your aim is to make money, right? To generate revenue, to have a profitable enterprise. And it's not fun running a business that isn't profitable. And so I would say the biggest thing about perseverance is just being honest with yourself, the situation that you're in, and understanding, is this something that is worth the continued effort or not? And a lot of that I would put around, and I would say that energy, are you getting energy back from prospects? Are you getting energy back from closing sales? Are you getting energy back in the form of revenue? If you're not getting those things, then I would say you need to pivot harder and just be real honest and open
Certainly.
with the situation you're in.
Interesting perspective. Thank you for that. I know you started your very first business straight out of college. But I'm curious, given the passage of
Mhm.
time, are there perhaps key lessons that you learned during those early years that still continue to influence your approach today?
Mm. Yeah, good question. I would say the first thing is that I think, and for a lot of us that are older and we meet people that are younger, we feel that sense of energy that they have and the optimism and the go-getter attitude. That's a wonderful thing to have, and to try and not lose that. I think sometimes it's easier as we age to get jaded, but I think that's one of the beauties of entrepreneurship is I think it is an optimistic endeavor, and at its core, it's a creative endeavor. I think entrepreneurship gets shorted in terms of when we think about creative endeavors. It really like leans more toward the arts, but I think entrepreneurship at its core is a creative endeavor, and so I think continuing to be optimistic and hopefully energized what you're working on, and to just tap into that creative energy that makes entrepreneurship such a wonderful thing. I think I've been able to harness that over the years, and part of it probably has to do with my ADHD. I don't like working on one thing probably for more than 5 years. Is probably my burnout, but
I
yeah.
believe when we were last talking, you mentioned the 5 F's philosophy that you have in Monkey Island
Mhm.
Ventures. Could you elaborate on
Yep.
what the 5 F's are, how it kind of shapes your thinking?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So Josh, Zach, and I, we've all known each other since we were about 5 years old, and we have a company called Monkey Island Ventures, and that business is named after a park that we used to play at when we were kids. And we've used the entrepreneurial operating system in some of our businesses, which we didn't make up. There's a book called Traction that's all about that. It's a really great business framework for small to medium-sized businesses. And one of the things that it talks about is core values. And so we started to adopt that when we were building out Monkey Island Ventures. And so those 5 F's for us are freedom, finance, family, friendship, and fun. And those are really the main kind of tenets that we live by. And I think the reason why we've been able to have such a successful partnership over the years is we've always put those 5 F's and our our relationships ahead of business. Very few business decisions you make will be absolutely like catastrophic. I think we all have some leniency in understanding decisions that end up being bad decisions that end up not being successful, and understanding that's just part of the journey. And that as long as we continue to just put our best foot forward and do that together, that we're on this journey as it's just a group, the three of us doing this together. Yeah. So I would highly encourage those entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs listening to go into business with friends. That's not a bad thing. Just make sure that you have your priorities straight, and hopefully it's that your friendship comes.
In terms of Rainmaker itself, you mentioned that you're building up these LinkedIn connections and you're using automate. Now, I'm sure the people who are listening and thinking LinkedIn's terms of service doesn't really encourage the use of automation, mass outreach, so to speak. Can you elaborate on how automation comes to play and how you use it to avoid getting picked up by LinkedIn or potentially banned?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Number one, like the limits that I told you, the 25 people a day, Monday through Friday during normal working, that's 125 people a week. That's under the weekly LinkedIn limits. Nothing that I advocate for or do, whether someone does it manually or whether it's through Rainmaker, is approaching any of the LinkedIn limits. I definitely recommend always staying under the LinkedIn limits. Don't spam LinkedIn. Everything you're doing should be adding value to the LinkedIn ecosystem, and specifically around the way that we're automating out like LinkedIn event invites, or automating out messages, or automating out connections on LinkedIn. Those are all things that are very monotonous. They are very repetitive. They take up a lot of time. And so we're simply just automating out those items that just take up a lot of time. And we do it in a way that is really completely mimicking human behavior and allows us to carry out activities on LinkedIn in ways that have never once have I had trouble on LinkedIn. Again, I've been doing this for myself for over 7 years. I've literally made, between myself and clients, thousands and thousands of connections, thousands of messages, thousands of LinkedIn event invites, and I've never once had a problem. And I think that just goes to the fact that we're using LinkedIn in ways that it should be used. And even to the extent that LinkedIn terms gets used, they literally don't even want you using another human doing anything on your account. I think LinkedIn looks at activities with a little bit of a blind eye because they also want as much activity happening on the network as they can without it deterring use on the platform. Meaning, yes, we don't want AI to ruin LinkedIn. We don't want spamming to ruin LinkedIn. As I said at the beginning of the conversation, nobody wants to be sold on LinkedIn, right? So there's all these things you should and shouldn't be doing on LinkedIn. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that use LinkedIn in ways that are spammy, that are salesy, and that really detract from the experience. And
I'm going to try and see if I understand this correctly. You're thinking of content or educational pieces, as you referred to before, that will be useful to your potential clients, offering that up as a means for them to engage with you as the very first bit of contact you make with, and assuming that they do make contact with you, engage with you, perhaps it's a live stream or a poll, you then use DMs as in direct messages on LinkedIn to follow up and build that relationship. Would that be a fair summary?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Direct messages are something that's really how you communicate with people one-on-one. But again, using LinkedIn events and using that invite function is also another really nice way of staying in touch with your audience and doing it in a way that it's coming in as an alert and not a direct message. And you'll be able to tell some of the messages that you send through direct messages, you don't necessarily need a reply, right? So if what you're doing is just sharing something, an asset that is of high value, you don't need them to respond and answer a question. You don't need them to respond to it at all if what you're doing is just trying to give them something of value. Where other times you might share something or you might ask a direct question wanting a response. So I think using direct messages in different ways where you're asking a direct question, maybe you're just simply sharing something, or maybe you're inviting them to a LinkedIn live stream or to a poll. Yeah, I would use DMs in a way that you're not burning your.
Question would be worth asking, because there are probably a few people in the audience who have been thinking about this. Is it worth being verified on LinkedIn or not? Okay.
I still haven't gotten
Well,
verified on mine and I'm doing fine. Yeah. It's probably a good idea to do it. LinkedIn is going to use their algorithm in ways to push what it wants, right? And so if being verified is something that LinkedIn sees as an indicator of strength on someone, and that person is better for the LinkedIn network to be more socialized, then yeah, then it's probably a good idea to do that. And I can say LinkedIn live streams, LinkedIn wants more video on the platform. They're pushing for that. They will help you get more views and engagement when you do video. I think they even say you get 24 times more engagement on a LinkedIn live stream than you do any other type of content on LinkedIn. As an example, from like a metric standpoint, I did a live stream on Tuesday this week. And so far, I already have over 8 hours of watch time on that 30-minute video. I did another one 2.5 weeks ago, and I had within 36 hours over 1,000 minutes watched on a 30-minute video. And again, the only people that got invited to the live stream were my first connections or my ICPs. So it's not like this is getting watched by a bunch of people I don't know. The people that you can only invite first connections to a live stream, to an event on LinkedIn. I can tell you that if you are creating the right audiences, you're connecting with them, and then you're providing them with good educational content, you will get engagement on LinkedIn. I can absolutely.
Is there a minimum audience number required for these strategies to work better?
No, and I would even say some people, I think, use that as a crutch to not get started. Don't fool yourself. When you first start, it's very possible you're not going to have very many people attending. So when I first started doing this a year ago, I would get maybe 2 or 3 attendees on the first few that I did. And I know there were times when I was talking and I was only doing it. I was only talking to myself. But I was also learning how to use live stream software. I was learning how to present my deck. I was learning how to use LinkedIn live streams. And so that was the tuition that I paid. And so now I'm getting generally 30 to 130 people every week attending my live streams and getting the numbers that I talked about in terms of watched hours on the content. Just start. I would say don't put it off. Again, if I was going to say, do you want to be successful on LinkedIn? Do you want to generate leads and sales? If the answer is yes, I would say, if you're already spending a lot of time on organic posting, I'd say start reducing your time on organic posts. Start increasing your time in building out your first connections. Like I already talked about, 25 a day, Monday through Friday, 125 a week. Then start building out a messaging sequence of high value. Start thinking about the assets you want to share. Think about your first LinkedIn live stream. Like, what's a topic that you could present week in and week out over the next 10 months of the year? So through 2025. So I'm presenting essentially the same topic that I have 2 topics, and I've created both of those decks probably between 6 and 9 months ago. I've made small improvements to them, but I'm not thinking about like a whole new topic every single week. Like I'm using the same topic and I'm just presenting it to my different verticals once a month. And I have 4 to 5 different verticals. So the other benefit is that I'll go live 5 minutes before I'm about to present because I already know what I'm talking about. I can do it in my sleep. I know exactly what I'm going to say. I know what all the slides are on my deck, and I know if it's I know it's of high value at this point. That's again part of the beauty is that people get burned out trying to think about new content all the time for organic posts. But focus some of your time, just create a really nice deck. Create a topic that your audience will be interested in, and create a topic that will be evergreen at least through the end of this year. And just
very
rinse and repeat.
Obviously, a premium LinkedIn account would be a prerequisite for all the things that you're describing.
Not necessarily, no. I'd say about half of my clients don't have any kind of LinkedIn premium. If they don't have Sales Navigator, I'll use mine. And I'll build audiences out of my Sales Navigator.
Okay. Sorry. So how does that work? So you're using your sales navigator just to develop a short list of people that they would then need to connect with on their account. Is that what you're referring to? Okay.
Correct. Yep. Yep. So I'll go into my sales navigator. I'll share my screen with my client and
Mhm.
we'll build out an audience or two. And then I will pull that audience into my software and have
Okay.
them
Right.
start connecting with that
Um,
audience.
a couple of things that come to mind. You're not a fan of posting content. Given your approach to lead generation, why not continue the conversations, the visibility on LinkedIn via organic content?
Oh no, I
Hmm.
don't think you should stop doing organic content. No, you should. Yeah, you should absolutely continue to do organic content. Yes, you still need to do that. But at the beginning of last year, I was trying to
Hmm.
post every day on LinkedIn, an organic post, and then I ended up creating the process that we've talked about today. And so now I'm posting on LinkedIn probably
Hmm.
three times a week, maybe, and I am much more focused on all the
Okay.
other activities that we've been talking about. But yes, no, organic posting still matters because
Hmm.
when people go to vet you, they want to see that you're active on LinkedIn. They want to see that your content is valuable, and that's both true for your personal profile as well as your
Okay.
company.
With the LinkedIn live streams that you do, you talked about keeping things simple, using a topic that you would pretty much repeat over time, I would say the course of the year, and just do that
Mhm.
for different verticals. I'm sure that people are thinking, wouldn't you get people in some of your verticals saying, I think I've seen that very same topic a few months ago? And if so, is there a bit of a
Mhm.
mismatch in terms of expectations or reputation that needs to be addressed?
Nope, you don't need to worry about that because it
Hmm.
comes in as an invite into their alerts with a bunch of other stuff, right? They can decide whether or not they want to attend. I've had some people, especially at the beginning of last year when I was just targeting fellow founders and entrepreneurs and with just the one topic I had some people sign up 3 or 4 times in a row because they weren't able to make it at previous times. So I think part of it is, yes, they might watch it or they might see a piece of it. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean that they wouldn't do it again in the future. It also doesn't mean that they wouldn't want a refresher on what you're teaching 6 months down the line. But that's also why it's good to start identifying other topics that your audience would be interested in. For example, the topic that I've been using since the beginning of last year was learn how to grow your network leads and sales using LinkedIn,
Hmm.
right? That's the evergreen one. What I realized is that a lot of people got interested in the process of LinkedIn live streams. So I started another LinkedIn live stream
Hmm.
teaching people how to do LinkedIn live streams. And so that's another one. So now I have these two main topics that I will invite people to. And I've had one person in the last year ask me, "Oh, is this the same one that you did X amount of months ago, whatever?" And I told her, "Yeah, it's pretty much the same one with some small updates." And
Right.
that was it. One person. And I've literally done this dozens of times at this point and sent out in aggregate thousands of LinkedIn event invites. Yes. And again, it's just showing up as an alert. It's showing up with all these other alerts that they're getting. So yeah, it's perfectly fine to continue but again, you don't want to invite the same audience every
Hmm.
single week to the exact same thing. What I'm doing is this audience will get invited to the same topic probably once every 6 to 8 weeks. And some of the things that I've been doing as well is I will do like a partner. So one of the things that I've done, I've started to do some partner live streams where my audience will learn about a
Hmm.
topic from someone that I'm bringing on, and then I will get exposure to that person's audience and teach them about a LinkedIn live stream topic that I want to talk about. But I'll sometimes invite my audience to that same topic because now there's someone else that's doing it with me and
Hmm.
it adds a little bit of a different feel when we're bantering back and forth about stuff that I may have presented on all by myself to them previously. So, yeah, even bringing in other people into a joint presentation is a nice way to spice things up and bring in
Hmm.
another thought
Very
leader.
interesting. Well, again, with the content that you're creating, be it the a live stream that you're doing, or the one around LinkedIn lead generation, for someone who's thinking of possibly experimenting with a similar approach, what would be the metrics that you would need to look for in order to know that this is worth repeating again and again, as opposed to pivoting and looking for a different angle to create more engagement and interest?
So are you talking about live stream specifically, or just
So
kind of
any
thing that
content that
we've
you would
talked about up
use,
to this
or
point?
any teachable content that you would use to engage with your potential clients.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's great. I think from a content perspective, you want to leverage metrics if you can. So I have a version of LinkedIn
Hmm.
Premium where I have things called smart links, and I can actually share like a PDF for documents or different assets on LinkedIn. And I can actually see when I use a smart link who the person is. I can see what asset they're looking at. I can even see how much time they're spending and how much time they're spending on
Hmm.
each page of the asset. So that's one of the benefits of using smart links. But again, if you are going to direct people to a post that you've done or a LinkedIn article, or maybe it's something up on your website, making sure that you have some form of analytics set up so you can see the amount of impressions you're getting or the amount of time spent. One of the things you can
Hmm.
experiment with is gating stuff. I'm not a huge proponent of that, but you can certainly try gating and seeing if you're able to generate leads and interest from gating content. But I think really what you want to do is see what types of interaction you're getting. And I think the other thing too is where
Hmm.
anybody that sits in a sales seat, as I have my entire professional life, I know we all feel pressure to generate revenue. We want to
Hmm.
close deals. We want to get more customers. We want the person we're talking to buy from us. You got to distance yourself from those emotions a little bit and remember that it takes, what is it, 7 to 11 impressions before somebody really starts to trust you and that they'd be willing to engage and buy from you. Start using those different impressions, knowing, okay, you know what? I'm going to share this asset to these people. I'm going to invite them to this poll. I'm going to ask them this question. I'm going to invite them to this event. And just know that's starting to stack up your interactions with these first connections. I've never looked at this, but one of the things you could probably look at is if you feel like you're hitting people with a bunch of different engagement engagements. And if you start to see like a decline in your first connections because people are blocking
Hmm.
you, then that's probably a good indicator that you're oversaturating them with content that they don't deem valuable. Aside from that, if they stay first connections and you're sending information to them and you're not getting huge response, that can still be okay. What you'd want to do is start putting in just some different opportunities for them to engage. Again, it could be a question. Maybe it's a poll you want to do. Again, we've talked about it a ton already, but like the live streams, are
Hmm.
they starting to opt into in a nice, easy way for them to opt into some of the things that you're doing that's starting to give
Hmm.
you a good indicator that they're interested in at least some of the content that you're creating? And then, yes, are there times where you want to just be more blunt? Maybe there's an offer, a discount, something that you're giving to people. It's okay
Hmm.
to layer that in, but I would do it in a way that still feels authentic. And I've driven a ton of beta users for the different software products that we've built over the years
Hmm.
using all the methods that we've talked about today. I think you just have to, again, use that experimentation mindset that I talked about in the philosophy and start to just experiment, do some small tests, start to see what people respond to and go from there. Marketing
Hmm.
sales is not a perfect science.
Yep.
We're all just making it up here. And I think the biggest thing is lean into what makes LinkedIn a great platform, which is stay authentic, stay genuine to who you are, really think about providing value first, education first, and then from that play around with some different sales efforts and see what actually gets the
Certainly
wheels turned.
makes sense, and appreciate that insight there. In this area of LinkedIn lead generation and approaching potential clients for the very first time, are there perhaps a couple of areas that you find doesn't get talked about very much, doesn't get much airtime? If so, what would they be?
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand the question. So with you're talking about with lead gen on LinkedIn and addressing prospects in ways that
Salesy.
aren't
Yeah,
like
that
typically
aren't
understood.
typically understood
Yeah.
or done, and even salesy, which is, I guess, the biggest issue that most people have, not wanting to come across as salesy. Are there perhaps a couple of areas that you feel don't get talked about very much? If so, what would they be?
I want to keep
Mhm.
drilling down on this. So when you say areas, what do you mean by
Perspectives
area?
or strategies or methods that you feel people aren't even thinking about or talking about?
Okay. Yeah, no, okay, good. Okay, good. I would say that
Mhm.
the vast majority of people that I talk to don't think about LinkedIn in the ways that we've been talking about it for almost the last 50 minutes. Like when people think about LinkedIn, they think about organic posts, they think about likes, they think about comments, they think about
Mhm.
what traction are my posts getting. That's where just so much energy is spent. And I don't think people think about LinkedIn enough in a way of identifying a very discrete group of people you want to get in front of, start building out first
Mhm.
connections. I never ever use InMail. So just forget InMail. As soon as I see InMail, I know it's just somebody just trying to sell me. I hate sponsored posts that
Mm.
show up in my inbox and I hate InMails. So if the path you got to go down is it's the path of building out first connections and it's the path of bringing value and education to those people through all the ways that we've talked about. So I think that's probably the biggest areas that like when I'm talking to individuals or to groups, when I'm presenting, it's that aha moment of, oh, there's this
Mm.
whole other way I could be using LinkedIn that has nothing to do with organic posts. And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't do them. You still should. But remember, every time you do an organic post, maybe 10% of your audience sees that post. And of that 10%, how many of those are actually your ICPs that you really want to be in front of and having an effect on? You do the numbers on that, and it's an incredibly small percentage of people that see any given post that are actually your ICPs that are in market to make a buying decision. Again, for awareness building, it's great. And as you continue to build out
Mm.
your first degree network of your ICPs and what we've talked about today, that also, I think, gives more merit to organic posts because your first degree connections are going to continue to increase of the types of people that you want to have see
Mhm.
your content. So that's another reason why you want to continue to build out your first degree network. But yeah, I would say that. And I think the vast majority of people just aren't very, they don't have the time or they think they don't have the time to use LinkedIn in ways that are using DMs correctly, that are
Mhm.
using very few people do polls. Very few people are doing LinkedIn live streams. And those are just a couple examples of some ways that you can engage your audience that are very different than what I think most people are paying attention to, which is
Certainly.
just an organic
And
post.
to wrap things up, if you were listening to this podcast episode, what would you say would be your biggest takeaway?
I guess if anything, it would be like I can guarantee that the process that I laid out works. Like I absolutely guarantee if you follow 25 people, if you adopt the philosophy we talked about, if you build out an audience of second and third degree connections that are your ICPs, if you start reaching out to 25 a day, Monday through Friday during normal working hours, I guarantee you're going to start getting first degree connections
Hmm.
within 24 hours with some of the people you're reaching out to. You will start to generate first connections with your ICPs. And if you start to then activate that audience with some of the things that we've talked about today, I can absolutely guarantee you, you will get people participating in your DMs. You will get people signing up to your live streams. You will start providing value to the not only the broader LinkedIn
Uh-huh.
ecosystem, but to your prospects in meaningful ways. Like it works 100%. It works. And so what you have to do is, spend the time, figure out what your audience wants to learn from you. What can you teach? What can you share? and do it. So that's the biggest takeaway is if people are complaining about LinkedIn not working, they're just not doing what I'm talking about, because I don't care if you use Rainmaker or not. Like I'm telling you that I've given you and your audience the process. Just go do it. I absolutely guarantee you will build out those first connections with your ICPs. And once you have that first connection, to me, it's better than having an email address. You could probably also get their
Sure.
email address after you
Yeah,
get them as a first connection too, if you really wanted to. But yeah. So I think that'd be my biggest takeaway is just start doing some of the things that I talked about today, and you will see that have an impact on your
right.
funnel and
And
your
if
lead
for those
sales.
listening in or watching are curious, want to find out more or connect with you, where would you recommend they head to?
I'm the only Colin Herdman on LinkedIn, and it's Hirdman. And rainmakergrows.com is the website. And I love chatting this stuff through. If anybody has any questions or whatnot, there's a free consultation button on the site that books
Okay.
a Calendly time directly with me. If anybody has thoughts or questions, go for it. And again, like this stuff, I have clients, solopreneurs up to large corporations, and they all are trying to figure out LinkedIn. And this process that we've laid out, doesn't matter how big of a company you are,
Right.
it works for everybody.
We'll include links to that in the show notes. Colin, thank you so much for doing this. It's been terrific.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. You had some really